Yo, what is up? It is your boys that they're back with a brand new What If. As you can see from the title, this is going to be What If Deku was Android 17. This was not even something that I had planned. Originally, I was supposed to be posting a different What If today, but, I guess I'll just have to postpone that. I got this idea out of nowhere. I was like, yo, what if Deku was an android? And then I was like, yo, what if he was my favorite android from Dragon Ball, Android 17? Now, in terms of the story, I'm definitely going to be giving him his powers as well as Cell's powers, just because I really like Cell. And I'm not going to do What If Deku was Cell because he'll just be ugly and nobody wants to see a cockroach. So, yeah. That being said, guys, remember that I always have the link to my Discord down in the description. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, the story will actually all play out when Deku's in the Quirk Doctor. He will be about 4 to 5 years. Let's go 5 years old. He'll actually be 5 years old at this time. During this time, he and Bakugo would have actually had a little bit of a shaky relationship, with Bakugo already having his quirk and Deku actually not having it pop up yet. This is when Deku will actually be at the Quirk Doctor one day, when he'll actually be told that he's quirkless. His whole entire world will proceed to break in front of him as he asks, "Are you sure? Is there anything I could do?" As Ujiko then says, "Glad you asked. There actually is something we could do. Since, in this world, there's not too many quirkless people in the world. Since in this version, it's going to be 2% of the population is actually quirkless. So I'm going to change that up just a little bit. So Deku will actually just be wondering, what can he do? Like, what is anything at all that he could do in order to change that? And the doctor will proceed to tell him that there's actually this procedure that he can be able to go through, but his parents will have to sign some papers, and without them knowing, they would actually end up signing some papers that will actually give him away to him, so he can perform whatever procedures he wants in Deku. Now, this is when Deku will actually be smiling, thinking, I'm gonna have a quirk, right? As the doctor just puts on a fake act and says, yes, you will, as he begins to tell him, and I'm gonna make sure of it, okay? He begins to act like a nice guy, as Deku's parents just completely agree with everything that's going on. This is when Ujiko will proceed to take Deku into a lab, as out of nowhere he will tell them that this procedure will actually go ahead and take about a week. So parents will proceed to be like, okay, as long as we can come in every day and check up on it. And the doctor will proceed to tell them that this procedure will actually be something that will actually have to be taken place, and as soon as it starts, they won't have access to him for about a week, as they will proceed to be like, okay, we can accept that. Now, this is when Deku would actually proceed to, Deku would proceed to be taken by Dr. Ujiko. He will actually take him to the lab where he performed things on Shigaraki as well as All For One. Now, this is when Dr. Ujiko will drop the nice guy facade, as he then has one of his creepy smiles go down on his face. He says, "Finally, I have a perfect test subject. A quirkless boy who will work perfectly for this experiment." For the next couple days, he performs various very dark procedures on Deku, as Deku just has nothing else to do but scream and yell in pain as he says, "Stop! No, this is hurting!" As the doctor just continues to do various procedures to him, turning him into an android. Part of his humanity will slowly die out as Deku's personality goes away as somewhat. As Deku's views on the world will proceed to change, as he's just getting angrier and angrier as the doctor proceeds to do various experiments on him. Now, what the doctor would have actually done to him is do exactly what he had done to Android 17, giving him the abilities of an android: limitless stamina, limitless ki, flight, ki, the barriers that Android 17 has. He'll also have the power absorption from the Xeno games, I believe it is, as well as Cell's ability to have Zenkai boost and his regeneration, as well as enhanced intelligence. Now, the doctor's big plans for Izuku was going to be a little bit different. His plan was to implant a bomb inside of Izuku's chest that will be remotely detonated, so Izuku will forever have to do everything and anything that the doctor asks him to. He was planning to have Izuku be a weapon of mass destruction, something that he could use to annihilate the hero world as he knows it and help All For One get to his goal. Now, All For One would have actually been completely unaware of what is going on. As Dr. Ujiko wanted to do this as more of a surprise for him. This is when he was about to implant the bomb into Izuku's chest, as Izuku, acting fake asleep, opens his eyes and grabs Uchiko's hand as Uchiko's just like, what? I had you taped to the table. As Deku says, you really think that can hold me? As he breaks out of the metal, as Uchiko's just like, this is magnificent. As he begins to think, you're everything and more than what I had made you. As Izuku's just like, yeah, I'm everything and more, except this is not going to be good for you. As Uchiko opens his eyes widely as he realizes what's going on. This is when Deku would proceed to point his hand at Uchiko as he then says, now die, as he blows Uchiko up. Now, this is when the doctor, as well as the entire lab, would proceed to blow up, and this would have been an underground laboratory, so nobody would have actually known of what has happened. This is when Deku would actually proceed to escape. He would grab the clothes that were nearby, and he would just have nothing but a little gowl on him. So Deku would proceed to grab a gowl as he puts it on himself and proceeds to run out. Now there will actually be a couple of villains standing guard, making sure that nothing happens, as Deku just blows right by them and ends up killing a couple of them. He ends up destroying most of the villains, and he would actually end up breaking out. He would be wandering for a couple of hours, actually a couple of days in a forest, as Deku's just wondering what's going on. At this point, it would have actually been about 1 week and a half since Deku's operation had started, and Uchiko would have actually daily gone to Izuku's parents, telling them that everything was actually going to plan. It's just that Deku's body was having to get trained, or else, his quirk may have not have been adapt with his body, as his parents completely and blindly just agreed to everything that the doctor said. The doctor, he would be 6 feet under at this point, as Deku would have instantly killed him, as well as any of the villains that were in that facility. Now Deku would have finally made it to civilization, as out of nowhere Deku one day would have been wandering in the forest as a giant bear would have attacked him. He would have shot a ki blast straight through the bear, killing it instantly, as he then felt sorry for what he had to do, since Izuku was still had a little bit of kindness within his heart. Think of it as the battle that that the main character from Tokyo Ghoul had when he was having his little torture happen. That's essentially what Deku was having happen to him, except a little less, because it wasn't that crazy. Now this is when Deku would have actually begun to fly. He would notice that he could fly, and he would actually end up working on this for about a week. Now after that happened, he would have actually decided that he needs to get out of this forest as fast as possible, thinking that he might starve to death. But then he begins to think that he hasn't gotten hungry, he hasn't gotten thirsty, his hair hasn't grown, nothing about him has changed. As he runs out and he finally makes it to civilization, Deku would find a police station nearby, as he would run up to it, and he would walk in looking very, very perfect, I guess you could say. He would look dirty, but he would look perfect, in perfect condition. As the cops would begin to look at him, and Deku would be like, I made it. No, he wouldn't even be tired. He would just run in there and say, please, help me. As the police would be like a little bit shocked at what they were seeing. Now this is when Deku would proceed to tell them the story about how there was a doctor who was performing experiments on him, and Deku had to kill him to escape. He would tell them everything, as the police would basically chop it all up to self-defense, and Deku would have no repercussions for what he had to do. The police force would actually end up finding out where his parents were and where he used to go to, as they would take him to Inko and Hisashi. Now Inko and Hisashi, finding out what had actually truly happened, would have sued that hospital for everything that they had, and that hospital would have actually been shut down, as they actually ended up getting a fortune for the things that doctor would have ended up doing, and they actually would have gotten a huge sum of money, which is actually $100 million. So they could actually live off that for the rest of their lives. They were extremely angry by the things that had happened to Izuku. And when Izuku tells them what the doctor had done to him, they would get angry and irritated, as they begin to get, fuming from the mouth, as they think, no, this is my little Izuku, as Inko just gets angry. And Hisashi would actually be just thinking that deep down that, it was good that happened, because now he no longer ever has to work again. He can spend the rest of his time with his family, as nobody had ever actually found out about this. Hisashi would have still been angry at it, but a little part of him would have actually been very accepting of what had happened to him, thinking that this solved everything. Before, they were struggling with money, and now they're one of the richest people in all of Japan. In terms of Deku's school situation, his parents would have actually taken out of that crappy school that he used to go to and put him into the same school that young Todoroki would attend. Now, this is when Deku would actually arrive to the class about a month later, after Deku had a little bit of time to think about what had happened, as well as get a little bit of a adaptation to what his powers were. During this time, Deku would only know that he has enhanced strength. He has ability to fly, and he has super energy blast that he believes that that's what they are. Now, this is when Deku would basically be taken to another quirk doctor where they ask him if he has quirk, but quirk doctor would proceed to tell him that it's not a quirk, he's part android. Deku would find out about this, and his parents would be a little like saddened by this, but they would accept him regardless, telling him that it was okay, that they would accept him no matter what. And Deku would actually smile, as Deku looked like a perfect boy. He had no scarrings, he had perfect skin, he was the perfect height for his age, and his hair was what should his hair be? No, yeah, Deku's definitely going to look like Android 17. Yeah, Deku's gonna look like Android 17 and be drippy, since you already know he grew up on a little bit of a better side than what he had in his little younger days, or as you could say, in canon. Now, this is when Deku would go to school for the first day, and as soon as he walks in, all of the girls in the class would immediately look at him and say, "Oh my god, who is this?" As a young Todoroki would look at Deku's direction, thinking, I guess we have a little new kid. As Deku would just walk in, and he would actually sit right next to Todoroki. As Todoroki would look at his direction and ask him who his name is, Deku would be very nice. He would be like, "Hey, my name is Izuku Midoriya." As Todoroki would be like, "Wow, this kid is actually quite nice." This is when Deku and Todoroki would actually start talking for a little bit, and after a couple of weeks, Todoroki and Deku would actually develop a very nice friendship together. Todoroki would tell Deku that his father's endeavor is, Deku would tell him that that's awesome, as Todoroki tells him it's really not, and he would begin to ask why, as in a couple of months, we could say 6 or 7, Todoroki would finally open up to him, telling him what his father does to him, and at this point, Todoroki wouldn't have the scar yet on his face, as Deku just never really knew about it. This is when Deku would basically find out about it and would get angry, as he would begin to tell Todoroki that, his upbringing wasn't that well as good as his either. He would tell him that when he was a kid, he was experimented on, and he had a crazy doctor make him an android. As Todoroki's like, "You're an android?" As Deku's just like, "Part of me is. I'm still human, but I guess you could say I'm half android." As Todoroki just listens to that, and he's like, "Wow, I had no idea." As Deku just basically tells him that it's fine. As Deku and Todoroki, during the next couple years, up until the very end, would basically develop a sort of different friendship, as Todoroki and Deku would basically grow up to be kind of like brothers. Regarding Todoroki's situation with his mother, Deku would have been extremely angry. Todoroki would have told him not to do anything to his father, since, as much as he hates his guts, he is a hero, and bad things could happen to Deku for doing that. As Deku would calm down, and he would tell Todoroki that he would never do anything. As for the next couple years, Deku and Todoroki would have actually accepted their powers, or quirks you could say, with Todoroki accepting his fire side, with Deku helping him, accept what he had. Deku would have talked to him and basically helped him accept what he is. He's the son of Endeavor, and even though he has that quirk, it's his own quirk. So Todoroki would now not have that old thing that he had. Todoroki would actually accept himself the way he is. Todoroki would have also gotten a little bit of a boost to his looks, since in this time, before Todoroki could have gotten his face burned, Todoroki would have still had his face burned and all of that. Nope, face burnt. I kind of dig that scar. Anyways, as for Deku's side, Todoroki would have actually mastered, not mastered. He would have actually gotten improved a lot in terms of his fire and ice quirk. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Todoroki would be about 3 times, Todoroki would be about 3 times stronger for what he had decided to do in training his quirk. And Deku, let's just say that Deku ended up finding out about all of his abilities. During the couple of years that he had, meaning he had 10 years to learn about all of his abilities. Almost every year, Deku would actually end up, or every so often, Deku would end up finding something new about himself, like that he could create barriers around himself, like a sort of shield that was almost unbreakable. Deku would have found out about his power absorption, absorbing the life energy out of people to boost his own strength. The stronger, the more boost it gives his self. And in terms of damage, Deku and Todoroki would have sparred during their young childhood, and Deku would actually not take any. If one time Todoroki ended up accidentally burning Deku to a crisp, but Deku would have instantly regenerated almost afterwards, and Deku would have been shocked. During the years, Deku would have noticed that he was leagues and bounds ahead of every of the other kids in terms of studies, and Deku would have, been like, what is this? As Deku would have had all of the powers that I would have mentioned, including flight, ki, barriers, power absorption, Zenkai boosts. Any damage he takes ends up going into his powers. He would have had cells regeneration as well as amazing intelligence. So we all know Deku is definitely broken. Now, in terms of something I forgot a little bit of this. In terms of afterwards, like about 1 week later, All For One ends up finding out about Dr. Ujiko's death as he gets angered and just thinks, who did this? As he just begins to think to himself that he's gonna hunt down whoever it was that killed him, and he's gonna torture him for the rest of his life, as he never actually ends up finding out about Deku or Ujiko's explosion, since the lab would have been blown up by Deku as soon as he was out, and Deku would have blown everything up to bits, as All For One would just be angered and left with a sense of not being able to do anything, with All For One looking through the underworld trying to find out who could have had a strong enough power to do this. During the years, Deku's name wouldn't really be out there as much, since nobody, or except for Todoroki, would know Deku's true strength. Yeah, that ends up covering everything. In terms of Deku's growing up, I'm just gonna say it now, guys. Deku growing up was always having all the girls all over him. He would always have all of the females like, hey Deku, like, go out with me. Deku, please. Like, and Deku would always let them down slowly. He wouldn't be a dick about it. He wouldn't be an asshole about telling them that no, he doesn't want to. He would just tell them that he's just not the right one for them. As Deku would basically just have lots of friends, and Deku would be insanely popular, rich. He would have the amazing look. He would actually be one of the great. He would be extremely no homo before I say this. All right, no homo. I'm wearing socks. He'd be extremely fine as fuck, no cap. And he would look basically like Android 17. He would have the blue eyes instead of green this time. And Deku's drip would basically be a mixture of very high fashion taste. He would just have a really high fashion taste. So sometimes he'd be just wearing hoodies with jeans with some, some dope white shoes. The other days he would be wearing that Android 17 drip, like that style that Android 17 likes, as well as using a lot of high up brands, like Supreme, I guess. Nah, he wouldn't like. Would he like that? He would use low key brands. He would use brands that cost a lot, but they're not really like out there, so nobody really ever ended up being like, oh, he's a spoil the rich kid, since he's not gonna be that at all. Deku's still gonna be pretty nice and down to earth. But yeah, so this is when Deku and Todoroki would actually be about 15 years old, and this is the day where Deku and Todoroki would actually barely just finish with school. During the next 3 months that they have, yes, I'm going to say that Deku and Todoroki have always trained, but during the last 3 months that they have outside of school before the UA entrance exams, Deku and Todoroki would have gone crazy. They would have gone insane. Now, I'm also going to mention this. In terms of sludge villains, since All Might was... here's what I think would have personally happened if Deku wasn't there. If Deku wasn't there, I'm pretty sure that the sludge villain would have ended up getting away and taking over somebody else's body, with All Might just never ending up catching him. And without all of that happening, I believe that no. I got this. Let me change things up. Deku would have not been there, so the sludge would have actually ran away. It would have gone a hold of Bakugo's body, just like it did in canon, just not for the same reason. And Bakugo would actually end up getting out of it by his own free strength. He would have used his own power to get out of it, since he actually would have trained a little bit more, and he would have used an explosion to blow that thing up to hell, just like Bakugo would have said. He would have actually ended up getting one for all in this version, meaning Bakugo, he's gonna get one for all. I know a lot of you guys might be like, fuck Bakugo, and same here, but I'm doing it for a certain reason, because come on now, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Deku are gonna be the big three. I'm just saying it now. And Bakugo's gonna be in last because Todoroki's I don't know, man. I'll figure that out later on. But Yeah. Now, this is when what's it called? This one Deku and Todoroki would have actually ended their 3-month break. In terms of Deku, I mean, he would have gotten just more of an understanding on his powers and would have actually mastered his barriers, as well as his ki blast, being able to use the no, I'm not gonna give him that. What attack? You guys can come up with your own energy blast that resembles the Kamehameha, except it's gonna be a bright green aura that just blasts right off of Deku's hands. It's gonna be performed kind of like the final flash in the Kamehameha. So yeah, definitely gonna be strong. And yeah, that's basically what Deku's basically gonna be having to do. Now, this is when Deku and Todoroki would actually, you know, just finally be able to go to the entrance exams. While they're walking in, Deku would actually notice a girl falling. This girl being Uraraka. He would actually catch her before she falls, and when she turns around to see who it was, she'd be like, "Oh, she would forget everything that's going on. She'd be like, "Hey," as Deku would say, "Hey, I noticed you were falling. Sorry that I used my powers to save you." As Uraraka would be like, "No, it's completely fine." As Deku would just smile at her, and he would basically let her go as he walks off. And she would try to say more, but she would just have her tongue tied as she doesn't know what the hell to say. I mean, she looks at Deku and she's just like, "Oh wow, like you're," as Deku just kind of walks off with Todoroki. This is when Deku and Todoroki would find their seats away from Bakugo, and Todoroki would actually end up taking the entrance exam and not taking the recommendation, since this time he would have actually done it just like Deku, you know, thinking that he needs to earn it just as much as Deku does. And yeah, so this one Deku and Todoroki would take the little exam. In terms of Deku talking and being a little annoying, that wouldn't happen at all. So no Ida little thing happens, and Deku just actually ends up acing that test and getting a 100% on the test. And afterwards, Deku would actually report to the little robot section with Todoroki, with them just both stretching as they're getting ready to unleash their power onto the robots. Now, this is when Deku and Todoroki would go to the front as Ida tries to stop both of them, saying, "Hey, don't try to talk to that girl." As Deku and Todoroki just look at him weird, and they're like, "We weren't going to talk to anybody. We were just trying to get to the front." As Ida looks at them and says, "My apologies." As they basically walk off just laughing, thinking, what a weirdo. As they get to the front, and Deku and Todoroki basically look at each other as soon as the present mic says, "There's no," and Deku and Todoroki immediately, Deku flies off and Todoroki shoots a giant ice that would, Todoroki would proceed to shoot, like create like an ice slide, kind of like Frozen, and just begin to fly and like maneuver everywhere, ending up with about, how many points should Deku get? I'm gonna say that Deku and Todoroki would proceed to go crazy. And this is when Todoroki would actually, by the end of this, end up getting 676 points, with Deku getting 1,069 points. Now, before anybody else could have even destroyed one single robot, Deku and Todoroki would have ended up destroying everything in the facility. As all of that entire section, not all of the sections, but they would have destroyed all of the robots in that certain section. Everybody there would have been like, as Deku and Todoroki would basically come out. And as soon as when the 0-pointer comes out, Deku would proceed to shoot his blast straight at it, being the blast that you guys comment down below. Let me know what you guys want it to be called. Deku will charge that up and go, as he begins to just blast it at it and destroy it to pieces. As Todoroki and Deku walk out like nonchalantly, just being like, that was way too easy. As Todoroki's like, what do you mean? As he's kind of breathing hard, just like trying to act dope, like just like Deku. Deku's not tired at all, but Todoroki, he's definitely tired, but he's trying to hide it. As when they're walking out, Deku ends up bumping into Todoroki, being like, you know you're tired, come on now, you don't gotta act for me. As Todoroki's like, I don't know how you do it, man. As Deku says, remember I have a limitless energy. As Todoroki's just like, damn it. As they just proceed to like chuckle about it as they just leave the areas. Everybody's just staring at them like, what just happened? Now, Deku and Todoroki would proceed to just basically hang out during the week, as Deku and Todoroki would proceed to get their letters, and they would actually be hanging out at Todoroki's house as they would get the letters, and Deku would actually bring his over as they both get accepted, being told that they both actually annihilated All Might's record. Deku being told that he actually holds the #1 record ever, and Bakugo would actually at this time have about 15% of One For All mastered. Using full cowling, using the 10 months to his advantage, and yeah, he would have ended up getting like let's say like 50 to 60 more robots than he did in canon. Also destroying the 0 pointer, I guess you could say, and Todoroki would have done way better than that. I'm just gonna say it. Now, this is when Deku and Todoroki would kind of fist bump each other as they're like, too easy, as they proceed to basically just hang out for the weekend, as the very next Monday comes around. This is when Deku would actually be getting into one of his cars as he says, yo, mom, is it cool if I pick up Todoroki before classes? His mom's just like, yeah, sure, Izuku, as Deku basically goes to get Todoroki in one of his limos before they get to class. Now, this is when Deku and Todoroki would arrive to class in style, as Deku and Todoroki basically arrive in a limo, and everybody just looks at them as the two, please excuse me for saying this, no homo, as the two hottest guys there, but basically proceed to walk into class, as Bakugo and Ida would basically be arguing, and as soon as Deku and Todoroki walk in, Todoroki would immediately get looked at by Momo as she's thinking that he is hot as shit, as the rest of the girls would actually end up falling over Deku as soon as he walks in, with Deku and Todoroki just kind of starting to, be like, not really caring too much for the attention, as Todoroki and Deku just end up taking seats in the back. Now, this is when all of the girls would immediately change their seats, moving very close to Deku, including Momo, actually. Nah, because Momo's going to be for Todoroki. I'm going to save Momo for Todoroki. Now, Momo would have sat next to Todoroki, and all of the other girls would have actually ended up sitting next to Deku, as Deku's just like, as Deku just kind of sits down. And this is when all the girls are basically asking him questions like, does he have a girlfriend? Like, what school is he from? Like, how old is he? What's his quirk? As right as this happens, Deku's just kind of talking to Todoroki, or at least trying to, when Aizawa stands up and he says, if you're here to make friends, I suggest you leave now. As all of the girls would basically look at his direction and be like, who are you? As Aizawa was like, my name is Shota Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher. Put these on and meet me outside. As Uraraka stands up and she's like, but what about your orientation? As Aizawa says, like, we don't have time for such silly things like that. As he basically proceeds to tell them to go change. Now, this is when Deku and Todoroki would immediately get up, trying to get out of that situation, as Deku and Todoroki go to the change room. This is when Deku would, and as well as Todoroki, would proceed to get asked by all of the other kids, like, what the hell they do? Like, what are they on? As Deku and Todoroki are, I'm just going to say it, they're completely shredded. They are shredded as shit. And all of the guys, including Kirishima's just like, yo, like, what do you eat? What are they feeding you? As Mineta is just over there trying to poke a hole into the girls' locker room, as Deku would proceed to basically create a barrier around Mineta, as he forces him to go away from that wall, and he then says, I suggest you stop being a pervert if you want to make it as a hero. As Mineta's just like, got it, and he's like, sorry, I won't do it again. And Deku's just like, yeah, you better not, as they basically all report outside. Bakugo would be looking at Todoroki and Deku as he's thinking, I'll just have to crush these guys. As soon as they walk outside, Aizawa would look at Deku as he says, here, throw this. As Bakugo's like, what? As he's like, I thought I would get the highest score. As Aizawa would basically tell Deku to throw it, and Deku would just reel his arm back as he charges ki into his arm as he begins to throw it and get infinity. He would launch that shit into space as he would proceed to get infinity. And this is when Aizawa would be like, have a smile on his face. He's like, impressive. As all of the other people would go. Now, Todoroki would get about 1,600. Todoroki would end up getting 69 meters. As Uraraka would also get infinity, and Bakugo would get about 1,050 points. Now, in terms of the other tests, Deku would blitz the race, getting to the thing in about, let's say, that's very short distance. So Deku would actually blitz there in about 1/3 of a second. And Aizawa would just be thinking that this kid is a monster. He needs to be a hero because if he's a villain, he doesn't think that even All Might could stop him. As they would proceed to take the rest of the test, and Bakugo would be like, "Who the hell are you?" As he walks up to Deku and bumps his shoulder as he says, "Who the hell are you?" As Deku says, "Oh, my name's Izuku Midori." As Bakugo says, "Deku." As Deku looks at Bakugo and he's like, "Huh?" As he's like, "Oh, Kachan, hey." As Bakugo's just like, "How'd you get so strong, you nerd?" As Deku says, "Oh, I ended up developing my quirk later on." As only people who actually know about Deku being an android is his parents, a couple police officers, and Todoroki. And he just tells Bakugo that it's his quirk, and Bakugo's like, "Huh, well, you're still always gonna be a defenseless Deku." As Todoroki walks up to him and he stares down at Bakugo as he says, "You better back off before I have to do something about it. Deku doesn't have any time for you." As Bakugo is like, "Oh yeah, I see hot. What are you gonna do about it?" As Bakugo and Todoroki have a stare down, as Aizawa looks at Bakugo and wraps him in his scarf as he says, "Another outburst like that and I'll expel you on sight." As Bakugo's just, "Ugh, whatever," as he walks off. And this is when Deku and Bakugo would proceed to just look at each other. No, wait, Deku and Todoroki would look at each other as they just begin to laugh, and they would walk out of there as Deku and Todoroki would proceed to just start laughing about Bakugo and kind of making fun of him as soon as they leave. They're like, "Who are you, Deku?" As Todoroki just starts laughing. He's like, did you see the way that his hair was? He looks like a Pomeranian." As all of the girls in 1A would have essentially ran up behind Todoroki and Deku. Deku and Todoroki would have just been like, same old, as Deku and Todoroki would basically be followed by all of the girls in Class 1A. This is when Deku and Todoroki would basically just walk home, and that's where I'm going to be ending part 1 of What If Deku Was Android 17. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop, I'm going to go with something a little light. Make sure to get 35 likes down below for the next part, and that being said, Zether out.